Today we're embarking on a delightful journey through the history of presidential pets, from the traditional to the downright bizarre. These four-legged, or winged, or scaly companions have shared the spotlight with some of the most powerful people in American history. So, grab a treat, and let's dive into the menagerie of pets that have graced the White House over the years. George Washington. Washington was a big-time dog breeder, especially fond of American foxhounds with names like Taster, Tipler, Tipsy, and, wait for it, Drunkard. That's right, Drunkard. He also had horses that served him during the American War of Independence. And let's not forget his royal donkey, a gift from King Charles III of Spain, John Adams. John Adams, a president whose pet names were just as bold as his politics. Adams had dogs, including one called Satan, making you wonder what was going on in the Adams household. Adams also had horses named Cleopatra and Caesar, continuing the tradition of presidential pets with regal names. But honestly, it's hard to focus on anything other than the fact that one of his dogs was named Satan. Move over, Old Yeller, Satan is in the house. Thomas Jefferson. Sure, he had the usual horses and dogs, but he also had a mockingbird named Dick. Dick was Jefferson's favorite. But Jefferson didn't stop at birds. He also had a pair of grizzly bear cubs. Realizing that having grizzly bears roaming the executive mansion might be a bit dangerous, Jefferson wisely gifted them to a museum in Philadelphia. Because nothing says presidential like donating your bears to a museum. James Madison. James Madison kept it simple with a single pet, a parrot named Polly. While Polly might not win any awards for the most creative name, she did outlive both James and Dolly Madison. James Monroe. James Monroe added some international flair to the White House pet scene with a spaniel and a Siberian husky named Sebastian. While we don't know much about Monroe's spaniel, we do know that it belonged to Monroe's youngest daughter, Maria Hester Monroe. John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams didn't just have pets, he had a mini silk production operation. His silkworms, cared for by First Lady Louisa Adams, were spun into silk. But perhaps the most intriguing, and possibly mythical pet story of all, is the one about an alligator that lived in the East Room during Adams's presidency, but historians are split on whether it's fact or fiction. Either way, it's a story that's stuck around, because who wouldn't want to imagine an alligator hanging out in the White House? Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson was known for his fiery temper, so it's fitting that his pets were just as feisty. Jackson owned several roosters which were used for cockfighting, a brutal sport. He also had a collection of horses, including one called Sam Patch, which was named after a famous daredevil known as the Yankee Leaper, reflecting Jackson's admiration for bold and daring acts. The most notorious of Jackson's pets, though, was his parrot. This parrot didn't just mimic polite conversation, it had a filthy mouth. The bird knew so many cuss words that, at Jackson's funeral, it started swearing so loudly and incessantly that it had to be escorted out. Martin Van Buren. Martin Van Buren's pets took a walk on the wild side. Literally. He owned 2 tiger cubs, but Congress wasn't thrilled about the idea of tigers prowling around the executive mansion, so they forced Van Buren to give up the cubs, and he reluctantly donated them to the zoo. It's probably for the best. Imagine trying to explain tiger scratches on the Oval Office furniture. William Henry Harrison. Harrison had a goat named either His Whiskers or Old Whiskers, and a cow named Sookie. Unfortunately, Harrison's presidency was cut short after just 31 days, so we can only imagine what other pets he might have introduced if he'd had more time. John Tyler. John Tyler had a more refined taste in pets. He owned an Italian greyhound named LeBeau. Tyler also had a horse named the General. And let's not forget Johnny Ty, his canary. James K. Polk is one of only 2 presidents who didn't have any pets while living in the executive mansion. Polk's no-nonsense approach to the presidency extended to his personal life, where he kept things simple and pet-free. Zachary Taylor. He had a horse named Old Whitey, the steed he rode during the Mexican-American War. He also had a pony named Apollo, a former trick pony from a circus, given to his daughter Betty. Apollo shared a stable with Old Whitey at the White House. Millard Fillmore. He had 2 ponies named Mason and Dixon, after the famous surveyors Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon, who established the boundary between Pennsylvania and Maryland, also known as the Mason-Dixon Line. Franklin Pierce. Franklin Pierce's presidency is often remembered for its role in opening trade with Japan. Pierce had at least 2 miniature teacup Japanese chin dogs, which were part of a gift exchange with Japan. Pierce also had 2 birds from Japan, further highlighting his presidency's link to this historic trade opening. James Buchanan. James Buchanan, the only bachelor president, didn't let his single status stop him from having some unique pets. Buchanan's most patriotic pet was an eagle. Alongside this majestic bird, he had a toy terrier and a Newfoundland, but Buchanan almost had an even more exotic addition to his collection. The king of Siam, modern-day Thailand, offered to send the elephants as a gift. However, the elephants never made it to Buchanan's care. By the time they were ready to be sent, Abraham Lincoln was president, and he politely declined the gift with a reply along the lines of, "Thanks, but no thanks." Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln had a soft spot for animals of all kinds. He owned a couple of horses, rabbits, goats, and a turkey named Jack, which was supposed to be Christmas dinner until his son Tad intervened, saving Jack from the dinner table. Lincoln was also the first president to have cats in the executive mansion, Tabby and Dixie. He once quipped that Dixie was smarter than my whole cabinet. His dog, Fido, became famous enough to turn Fido into a generic name for dogs, Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson might not have officially had pets, but he did have some unexpected animal companions during his presidency. Johnson discovered white mice in his bedroom and, rather than getting rid of them, he fed them. Would you also do the same if you find white mice in your bedroom? Tell us about it in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. Ulysses S. Grant. Ulysses S. Grant, the Civil War general turned president, had a strong connection to his horses, many of whom served with him during the war. He owned several horses. Grant also had a dog and 2 ponies. Rutherford B. Hayes. Rutherford B. Hayes was a true animal lover, with a menagerie that included dogs, cats, and even the first Siamese cat in the United States. James A. Garfield. James A. Garfield had a horse named Kit, but the real star of Garfield's pet lineup was his dog, Vito. Why the name Vito? It's a bit of a mystery, but we can imagine Garfield, known for his strong opinions and firm stance on certain issues, might have had a bit of fun with the idea of a dog who could veto anyone's commands, except his own, of course. Chester A. Arthur. Chester A. Arthur, the stylish and sophisticated 21st president, had a more understated approach to pets. He owned 3 horses, though their names have been lost to history, and a rabbit, also unnamed. Grover Cleveland. Cleveland's household included 3 dachshunds. He also had a Japanese poodle named Hector and a random dog. He also had a few mockingbirds, and then there were the exotic fish, because why not? Among these fish were paradise fish, a gift from the ruler of Siam, Benjamin Harrison. Benjamin Harrison had one of the more unusual pet collections in White House history. Whiskers, the goat Harrison kept at the White House for his grandchildren. And then there were the opossums. Yes, opossums, named Mr. Reciprocity and Mr. Protection. These oddly named pets were a nod to the 1896 Republican Party platform, adding a bit of political humor to Harrison's household. If that wasn't enough, Harrison's son Russell probably kept 2 alligators in the White House conservatory. William McKinley. His most famous pet was a yellow-headed Mexican parrot named Washington Post, who had a special talent, whistling Yankee Doodle. But perhaps the most interesting pets in McKinley's collection were his Angora kittens, named after Spanish General Valeriano Weyler and Spanish Ambassador Enrique Dupuy de Lome. These names, tied to key figures in the Spanish-American War, suggest that McKinley had a bit of fun with his pets, using their names to reflect the political tensions of the time. Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt had so many pets that the White House was basically one step away from being a full-blown zoo. Seriously, if it had a gift shop, you'd be buying tickets. Let's start with his son Archie's favorite, Algonquin, a calico pony. When Archie came down with the measles, his brother Quentin decided the best cure wasn't chicken soup, but a visit from Algonquin. So, in true Rooseveltian fashion, Quentin shoved the pony into the White House elevator and delivered him right to Archie's room. That's right. Forget flowers and cards. We're talking pony deliveries here. But the Roosevelt Pet Parade didn't stop there. Among the menagerie was Jonathan Edwards, a small black bear from West Virginia, charmingly named after an ancestor of Mrs. Roosevelt. Roosevelt also had 2 cats, Tom Quartz, named after a Mark Twain character, and Slippers. Oh, and did I mention Bill the Laughing Hyena? Yep, the White House had a hyena, and Bill holds the title as the only hyena ever kept there. And let's not forget the one-legged rooster, because, in the Roosevelt White House, why wouldn't you have a one-legged rooster? So there you have it, some of the most intriguing presidential pet stories we've ever witnessed. Which one is your favorite? Tell us in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you the next time, in part 2.